Every time I lock my bathroom door now, I feel a peace I never imagined I'd need to cherish so much. The click of the lock is almost a hymn of freedom for me. Funny how at 73 years old, I had to relearn the value of a shower without startling interruptions. My name is Mary Johnson. Here from my apartment in the Riverside neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, I can finally tell this story, sitting peacefully in my tiled bathroom. I chose this place to narrate because it was here, in these 60 square feet, that my dignity was stolen drop by drop, like the water dripping from this old showerhead I never managed to replace. I worked for 41 years as a cleaning assistant at Memorial Hospital. I knew every corner of that place, every kind of mess a human body could produce. I cleaned hallways, wards, operating rooms, but mostly bathrooms. So many bathrooms that when I close my eyes, I can still see the worn tiles of the hospital. So many years scrubbing floors on my knees that I developed chronic bursitis that stays with me to this day. A constant pain that reminds me every blessed day of the price I paid for this $3,800 monthly Social Security check. Every penny of my life was saved with purpose. While my coworkers bought new purses or went to the salon, I saved. While my ex-husband spent money with friends at the bar before abandoning me, I saved. One day I thought, I'll have my own place, and I succeeded. This apartment on Maple Street cost $320,000. Small, yes, just 2 bedrooms, but mine, completely mine. I repeated this like a mantra while signing the deed, my trembling hands holding the pen. Edward, my son, was 32 when I bought this place. "Mom, I'm so proud. You're an example," he would say. I remember it like it was yesterday. He helped me choose the furniture, painted the walls, installed the curtains. Back then, he worked at a sporting goods store, had his own money, his own rented apartment in the Arts District. I never imagined that 13 years later, he would return to live with me. "It's just until I get back on my feet," he promised when he lost his job. Allowing him to return home was almost instinctive. That's what mothers are for, right? We open our doors, our drawers, our hearts. I had a spare room anyway. I thought it would be nice to have company in my old age. The first signs appeared so subtly I barely noticed. A towel out of place, a noise in the middle of the night, a drawer left ajar. Small things I attributed to my memory, which wasn't what it used to be. It was on a Tuesday about 2 years ago that I noticed something different. It was my morning routine. Wake up at 6:30, prepare coffee, and go to the bathroom for a hot shower to relieve my bursitis. I was shampooing my hair when I heard knocking on the door. Mom, I need to grab something urgently." Edward's voice sounded anxious. I replied that I was in the shower to wait a bit, but the knocking continued, louder. "It's urgent, Mom. I'll come in quickly. I won't look." Before I could answer, I heard the door opening. The steam clouded the glass shower door, but I could see his silhouette. He rummaged through something on the counter, in the drawers, stayed behind me, then left quickly, hands in the pocket of the worn sweatshirt he wore to sleep. "Thanks, Mom. Sorry about that. Needed headache medicine." That day I didn't think much about it. Sons can be like that sometimes, unaware of boundaries, especially sons raised by single mothers like me, who always did everything for them. Probably too much. But it happened again the next day, and the next, and the next. Always at the same time, always the same urgency, always that movement behind me, and then the quick exit. Sometimes he needed deodorant, other times a toothbrush, medicine, scissors. Never the same reason, but always the same behavior. "Edward, why don't you get these things before or after my shower?" I asked one day while serving lunch, which I still prepared daily despite my bursitis protesting. "Oh, Mom, it's because I wake up at that time, and then I forget. You know, I've had anxiety problems since I lost my job." And I accepted it. I accepted it because I saw his dejected face, his 45 years weighing as if they were 60. Unemployed for 3 years, increasingly isolated, spending entire days in his room with that old laptop, occasionally a job interview that never led anywhere. "He's suffering," I justified to my friend Irene when she questioned why I let Edward invade my privacy like that. "The job market is tough for men his age." The truth is, I felt guilty. Guilty for not being able to help more, for my retirement barely covering our expenses. Guilty for sometimes getting irritated by his constant presence, by the fact that he didn't contribute a cent to the household. Guilty for sometimes wanting my space back. Over time, I modified my routine to avoid discomfort. I started taking quicker showers, bringing my robe into the bathroom instead of leaving it hanging behind the door as I preferred. I began storing my personal items in different places, thinking I was becoming forgetful when I couldn't find them. One morning, while standing in line at the bank to withdraw my Social Security, the lady in front of me was talking to another about her son who was always asking for money. "Every month it's the same thing, Betty. $500 for this, $300 for that. When I checked, it was all for those gambling websites." Richard blew through almost $20,000 of my money. Something about that conversation deeply bothered me, but I pushed the thought away. Edward wouldn't be capable of that. Not my son, who was once such a hard worker. That afternoon, returning home, I found Edward in the living room, intensely looking at his phone, as if studying something important. "Found any work, son?" He quickly locked his screen, startled. "No, Mom. Just looking at some things." That night I opened my bank statement. There were withdrawals of small amounts that I didn't remember making. $200 here, $300 there. Nothing big enough to immediately alarm me, but added up, well, I blamed my memory again. Months passed and Edward's behavior intensified. Now he wouldn't even wait for me to respond to his knocks. He would simply enter, always strategically positioning himself behind me. One day we were at the supermarket, and I needed to pay with my card. I noticed Edward stood behind me, very close, while I entered my PIN. I thought he was just protecting me, making sure nobody saw my information. "Mom, let me type it for you. Those keys are too small," he said, already reaching out. "No need, son. I can still see well up close." I noticed his frustrated expression, but again didn't give it much importance. After all, he was my son, my only son, my family. The bathroom scene repeated every day. Every morning I felt his presence behind me while I showered. The door opening without my permission, the same ritual, the same excuses. Once the water stopped in the middle of my shower, something common in this old building. I stood there, soapy, waiting for it to return. I heard the door open. "Mom, everything okay? I heard you cursing." I hadn't said a word. "I'm fine, Edward. Just the water stopped. Please go out so I can wrap myself in the towel." He didn't leave immediately. He lingered for a few seconds, rummaging through something behind me. "I'm going. Just need to grab something." That's when I realized my robe, where I usually kept my cell phone and sometimes my wallet in the pocket, was hanging behind the door. "Edward, what are you doing?" "Nothing, Mom, just getting my comb." The comb that was kept in the second drawer on the opposite side from the robe. That night I checked my wallet. Everything seemed in place, but something told me it wasn't. I began marking withdrawal days on the calendar, noting every penny I spent in a little notebook hidden in my sock drawer. The math didn't add up. Money was always missing. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Barbara, my 68-year-old neighbor, who always helped me with technology. "Mary, I came to show you those craft videos I mentioned and also wanted to invite you to the parish charity tea." While we were talking, Edward passed through the living room, casting a lingering look at my purse on the sofa. "Your son hasn't found a job yet?" Barbara asked after he left. "No, it's difficult." "Excuse my intrusion, but—" She hesitated. "My nephew went through something similar, became unemployed, and started taking money from his mother secretly to bet online. Those gambling sites are everywhere now." I immediately defended Edward, but the seed of doubt was planted. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, thinking about every interaction over the past months. Edward entering the bathroom every day while I showered, the unidentified withdrawals, the furtive movements, his hands always in his pockets when leaving, the disappearing money I attributed to my failing memory. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd need to do. While Edward slept, I entered his room and checked the browsing history on his laptop. There they were: Bet365, DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, gambling sites, dozens of accesses, all at the same times when I noticed money disappearing. The floor seemed to crumble beneath my feet. I closed the laptop and left the room, heart pounding in my chest. The bathroom, once my refuge, had become a crime scene, and I, without knowing, was not only the victim, but also the walking ATM he accessed daily. I wiped away tears I hadn't even realized were falling. I looked at myself in the hallway mirror, seeing the deep wrinkles on my face, the white hair I hadn't dyed in months to save money, my hands deformed by arthritis, and decades of scrubbing hospital floors. Who was this woman who allowed herself to be robbed daily by her own son? That same afternoon, with money I still had hidden in a cocoa tin at the back of the kitchen cabinet? Yes, elderly people still do that. I went to the nearby mall and bought something I never imagined I would: a mini camera small enough to hide on the bathroom shelf facing the door. $89 spent at the Best Buy store in the mall. I almost cried handing over the money, not for the amount, but for the meaning behind that purchase. Back in the apartment with Edward still out, I carefully installed the device, hidden among shampoo bottles. The salesperson had explained how it worked, and despite my technological difficulties, I managed to connect it to my phone. That night, I slept with the phone under my pillow, waiting for the next day with a mixture of anxiety and dread. As I tell this painful story from my bathroom, which is finally just mine, I'd like to know where you're watching from. Comment below with your city. Sometimes I feel alone in this struggle, and knowing there are people from all across America listening gives me strength to continue. Tomorrow came, and with it my routine: coffee, blood pressure and bursitis medication, and the shower. I left my robe hanging, as always, with the phone in one deep pocket and wallet in the other. I entered the shower stall, turned on the water, and waited. It didn't take long. 3 minutes after the water started falling, I heard knocking on the door. "Mom, I need to get something." As always, he didn't wait for a response. The door opened, and now I knew he was being recorded. I continued my shower, pretending normalcy while listening to his movements. "Just a second, Mom. I forgot my deodorant here yesterday." The deodorant that was kept in the first drawer, far from the robe. I finished my shower in silence, disturbed by the awareness of what was really happening during those daily minutes of invasion. After he left, I dried myself slowly, hands trembling so much I could barely dress. I grabbed my phone and, with my heart racing, locked myself in my bedroom to watch the recording. The video showed exactly what I feared. Edward entered the bathroom, went straight to the robe, not the drawers. With the skill of someone who's done this many times, he removed my card from the pocket, examined it, and returned it. But not before muttering something that froze my blood. "Stupid old woman doesn't even notice. Same thing every day." Stupid old woman. I, who washed his diapers, who worked 2 shifts to pay for his schooling, who saved every penny to give him a better future than I had. Stupid old woman. The tears came uncontrollably. It wasn't just the money, although that was serious. It was the daily invasion of my privacy, the disrespect, the deepest breach of trust I had ever experienced. I remained locked in my room until I heard the front door close, indicating Edward had left. Then I dragged myself to the kitchen, took the little notebook where I noted my expenses, and started calculating. How much money had disappeared? For how long had this been happening? With trembling hands, I accessed the bank app on my cell phone that Barbara had taught me to use. The transaction history for the past months was there. Withdrawals, online purchases, transfers to unknown accounts, amounts ranging from $100 to $2,500, always on different days to avoid raising suspicions. The reality was worse than I had imagined. In 14 months, almost $42,000 had disappeared in small portions. Almost $3,000 per month, almost my entire Social Security check, which should have been saved for my medications, for fixing the still dripping shower, for the dignified life I deserved after 41 years cleaning hospital floors. Now I understood why he stood behind me at the supermarket. It wasn't protection. It was to memorize my PIN. I understood the strange behaviors, the sudden departures right after I received my Social Security, the constant excuses about always looking for work without ever finding any. That concerned son who said he entered the bathroom because I might fall, who insisted on accompanying me to the bank to help, who offered to pay bills online. Because it's dangerous for you to go out with cash, Mom. All lies. A parasite disguised as a devoted son. The most ironic part? I, who spent 41 years cleaning hospital bathrooms, had my own bathroom transformed into a crime scene daily. The place that should have been my refuge, my moment of privacy, had become the spot where I was robbed and humiliated without even realizing it. That afternoon, I made the first of many decisions that would change my life. With my phone in hand and the recorded video, I took a bus to the Wells Fargo branch where I received my Social Security. I asked to speak with the manager. "Mrs. Johnson, how long has this been happening?" asked Patricia, the 38-year-old manager, after watching the video with an expression mixing shock and compassion. "I'm not certain, at least a year, maybe more, from what I saw in the statements." Patricia typed some information into her computer, her fingers with perfectly manicured nails contrasting with my gnarled hands. "We'll block your cards immediately and issue new ones. We can also check if there's a possibility to dispute some of the more recent transactions." While she talked about security measures, new PINs, and possible legal actions, a battle was happening inside me. The maternal love I still felt, the disgust at the betrayal, the shame for having been so blind, so naive. "Would you like to file a police report?" Patricia gently asked. "This is a crime, Mrs. Johnson, a crime against an elderly person with aggravating factors." I shook my head, unable to respond. How could I report my own son? The boy I once cradled in my arms, whom I taught to walk, whose scraped knees I healed with kisses and antiseptic. But also, how could I not report the man who violated my privacy daily, who mocked me, calling me a stupid old woman, who transformed the bathroom I had spent my life cleaning at the hospital into his daily theft point? "I need to think," I finally answered. I returned home with a temporary card and the promise that new ones would arrive in a few days, sent to Barbara's address, my neighbor, not to my home, a precaution suggested by Patricia. Entering the apartment, I looked at every corner with new eyes. The cracks in the wall I never had money to fix, the worn sofa I dreamed of replacing, the old television that Edward insisted we needed to update, although I barely watched it. Everything had new meaning. Now each deprivation, each sacrifice, each "we can't afford it this month, Mom," felt like a slap. 41 years cleaning Memorial Hospital, 41 years on my knees, bent back, rough hands from scrubbing. And for what? To be called a stupid old woman by my own son while he stole the fruit of my labor to pay for his online gambling, while he pretended to look for work, to finance his laziness while my shower continued dripping. That night I cried until I was dry. Not for the lost money, although that hurt deeply. I cried for the betrayal, the shame, the lost time believing I was helping a son in difficulties when I was actually feeding an addiction and exploitation. But when the tears dried, something new emerged within me, a determination I had never felt before. At 73, with chronic bursitis and white hair, I still had something Edward didn't expect: dignity. The next day, I began planning my liberation. That Thursday, August 8th, 2024, I woke with a different determination. I can't explain it well, but there was something in the air, as if my body knew before my mind that it was the day of truth. For weeks, I had been gathering the small cents from my Social Security, hidden in an empty cookie tin, to buy something I never imagined needing in my own home. The mini camera arrived 2 days before in a discreet little package. It cost $89 at Best Buy, with free shipping. A tiny black thing that fit in my trembling palm. The guy in the YouTube tutorial said to just press a button and hide it somewhere. "Works like a charm, ma'am," the salesperson guaranteed via message. I was never one for these technologies. My phone is simple, one of those Edward keeps saying is for old people. But that day, with instructions written on paper and reread dozens of times, I transformed into an improvised investigator inside my own bathroom. At 6:40 a.m., before my usual 7 a.m. shower, I positioned the camera behind the perfume bottle on the shelf, pointing toward the door. I tested it 3 times to make sure it was working. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the Old Spice cologne bottle I got last Christmas from neighbor Carol. "May God forgive me if I'm wrong," I murmured to myself while adjusting the angle. "May God forgive me if I'm right." I followed my normal routine. I took my faded pink towel, hung my robe behind the door as I always did, with the bank card in the pocket, because Edward always needed money for medicine or an urgent bill, and entered the shower. As predicted, it didn't take 3 minutes for the door to open. The noise of the water muffled the creak of the hinge, but I had learned to feel the temperature change when the door opened. I closed my eyes under the shower, feeling that familiar presence behind the curtain. The same ritual as always. After the shower, I waited for Edward to leave for the computer course he claimed to attend on Thursdays. I sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in hand, trying to remember how to access the camera images according to the instructions. When the recording started playing, my heart felt like it would jump out of my mouth. The image was a little dark, but clear enough. I saw the robe hanging, heard the shower running, and then the door slowly opened. Edward entered stealthily, looking at the shower curtain, quickly approached my robe and, with the dexterity of someone who has done this many times, went straight to the left pocket. His agile fingers removed my card from the wallet. But what came next was what made my world collapse. "Stupid old woman doesn't even notice. Same thing every day," he muttered while putting my card in his jeans pocket. "I'll return it after lunch. She never checks anyway." In that moment, something broke inside me. It wasn't just my mother's heart, it was my faith in humanity, my trust, my foundation. Those words, "stupid old woman," coming from the mouth of the boy I breastfed, taught to walk, defended from bullies at school. I paused the video, unable to continue watching. I ran to the bathroom and threw up my entire breakfast. My bursitis flared up badly, and I had to lean on the sink to avoid falling. For long minutes, I stood there staring at my reflection in the mirror. An elderly lady with gray hair, swollen eyes, with the expression of someone who just discovered they've been living a lie. When I managed to compose myself, I returned to the bedroom and continued watching. Edward quickly left the bathroom, and the recording continued showing only the shower curtain swaying. With a heavy heart, I took my old spare cell phone that I kept in the drawer and began investigating. I opened the bank app that Tanya from Wells Fargo had taught me to use a few years ago and checked the complete statement. The horror grew as I scrolled through the screen. Transfers, withdrawals, purchases at stores I never frequented, and one name that appeared several times, DraftKings. I didn't even know what that was until I searched on Google and discovered online gambling. In 14 months, $42,000 had disappeared from my account. Almost half of what I had saved for medical emergencies, for a possible nursing home if I became dependent, for my own funeral, so as not to be a burden to anyone. The money I had saved penny by penny, working in pain, cleaning hospital bathrooms while others slept. A lifetime of sacrifices transformed into bets. I then remembered all the times Edward stood behind me when I used the ATM. "Let me help you, Mom. You can't see properly," he would always say as I typed my PIN. Now I understand he wasn't helping me. He was memorizing my PIN, spying over my shoulder. I spent the rest of the morning like a ghost in my own home. I opened all the drawers in his room, finding purchase statements, receipts for transfers to accounts I'd never heard of. Under the mattress, a folder with gambling site brochures and a credit card that wasn't in my name. I later discovered it was a cloned card of mine. At noon, Edward returned for lunch. As he always did, he discreetly put my card back in the pocket of the robe hanging in the bathroom. I observed through the door crack, feeling a mixture of disgust and sadness I never thought possible to feel toward my own son. During lunch, he commented that I was quiet. "Are you sick, Mom?" "No, son, just tired." "You should see a doctor. You haven't been well. I can take you tomorrow." The fake concern, the empty words, everything now had a different meaning. That "I can take you to the doctor" meant another opportunity to be near my card, my PIN. Each gesture of apparent care was, in fact, a form of control, of access to my money. I couldn't eat. Each forkful felt like sand in my mouth. When he finished lunch and said he was going back to the course, I just nodded. As soon as the door shut, I grabbed my purse and left. I walked 3 blocks to the Wells Fargo branch, where I've had an account since 1983. My legs hurt, my bursitis throbbed, but I was driven by something stronger than physical pain. At the bank, I asked to speak with the manager. Patricia Gonzalez, a 38-year-old woman with dark hair pulled into a bun, received me at her glass desk. Her concerned look intensified when she saw my state. "Mrs. Johnson, did something happen?" I showed her the video. Patricia watched in silence, her expression changing from concern to indignation. "This is a crime, Mrs. Johnson." "A crime against an elderly person, financial crime." "He's my son," I replied, as if that explained everything. "All the more serious," she said, holding my trembling hands across the desk. "You trusted him." Patricia helped me block all cards at that moment, printed detailed statements from the last 2 years, initiated a dispute process for some recent transactions, and most importantly, listened to me, not with pity, but with respect. "You worked for this money. Nobody has the right to take it from you, not even a son." While she was typing on the computer, a memory crossed my mind. Me in the maternity ward holding Edward for the first time. So small, so dependent. The nurse saying, "Take good care of him, so one day he'll take care of you." What a broken promise. I left the bank with a new temporary card, a folder full of documents for reporting, and a weight in my heart that no mother should carry. On the way back, I passed by the small park where I used to take Edward to play as a child. I sat on a bench and cried like I hadn't since my husband James died 12 years ago. It wasn't just about the money, though every penny represented hours of work, joint pain, sleepless nights. It was the betrayal, the invasion, the disrespect for my old age, my dignity. My own son saw me as a walking ATM, not as his mother. That night, Edward came home late, smelling of cigarettes and beer. I pretended to be asleep. Through the crack in the door, I saw when he went straight to the bathroom, opened the drawer where I used to keep medications and where my spare card used to be. He searched frantically, then came to my room, looked through the half-open door, and seeing me sleeping, backed away. The next day, I woke up before him and went to the Elder Justice Center downtown. Detective Fernanda received me personally after hearing a summary of my case from the receptionist. A middle-aged woman with graying temples, firm eyes that must have seen many stories like mine. "Mrs. Johnson, you're not the first, and unfortunately won't be the last. Financial abuse against the elderly is epidemic, especially when it comes from family." She watched the video, examined the statements Patricia had given me, and took my formal testimony. When we finished, 3 hours had passed. "Do you want to proceed with the criminal complaint against your son?" The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. My mother's heart screamed, "No," but my dignity as a woman, as a human being, whispered, "Yes, I want my money back. I want my privacy back. I want my life back." "Then we'll fight for it. responded Detective Fernanda, stamping the documents with a determination that gave me strength. I left the police station with a copy of the police report and a strange feeling of liberation. On the bus returning home, an elderly lady sat next to me. She must have been about my age. She carried a shopping bag on her lap. "Rough day?" she asked, noticing my still trembling hands holding the folder with documents. "The toughest of my life," I replied. "It'll get better," she said, briefly resting her wrinkled hand on mine. "It always gets better when we decide we deserve better." Those words from a stranger stayed with me. When I got home, Edward wasn't there. There was a note on the refrigerator: "Went job hunting, back tonight." The same old lie. I sat in my bathroom, in the same place from where I'm narrating this story now. I looked at the shower stall where I bathed, at the floral-patterned plastic curtain I chose at the neighborhood store, at the robe hanging behind the door. For how many months had that intimate space been violated daily? The answer was clear now. 14 months. $42,000 divided by 14 months gave approximately $3,000 per month. Almost the value of my full Social Security check of $3,800. While I economized on medications, cutting them in half to last longer, while I put off buying new shoes because the old ones could still be worn, my son was throwing my money away on online gambling. In that moment, sitting on the closed toilet seat, I finally understood the complete meaning of betrayal. It wasn't just a son stealing from his mother. It was a 45-year-old man deliberately choosing to exploit a 73-year-old woman, entering the bathroom while she showered, unprotected, vulnerable, to steal her livelihood. I had spent 41 years cleaning hospital bathrooms so my son could transform my own bathroom into a crime scene. And as this understanding pierced me like a blade, something unexpected happened within me. An old anger, dormant, began to awaken. An indignation I didn't know I was still capable of feeling, a strength I thought I had lost in decades of hard work and maternal self-sacrifice. "Enough," I said aloud to the empty bathroom. "Enough." This was just the beginning of my journey to reclaim my dignity. If you want to follow how I faced this situation and reclaimed my life, subscribe to the Grandparents' Tales channel. Many elderly people go through similar situations in silence, and your subscription helps bring these stories forward. They say strength comes at the most unlikely hours. For me, it came on a rainy Monday in August, 3 days after the discovery that changed everything. I woke to the sound of raindrops hitting the window and a quiet certainty. My life couldn't continue like this. Edward left early, agitated because his bank cards no longer worked. He said he was going to resolve a confusion, not knowing the confusion was my doing. As soon as the door shut, I picked up the phone and dialed the number that my neighbor in 302 had given me. "Locksmith Total Security." "Good morning," answered a deep voice on the other end. "Good morning. I need to change all the locks in my apartment. It's urgent." 2 hours later, Mr. Anthony Ferguson parked his blue van in front of the building, a 62-year-old man with a graying mustache and calloused hands carrying a toolbox. While examining my doors, I noticed his observant eyes analyzing me. "Problem with your son?" he suddenly asked, surprising me. "How did you know?" He smiled without joy. "Been doing this 40 years, ma'am. When a lady your age calls me urgently, it usually involves family." While changing the main door lock, Mr. Anthony told me his own mother had gone through a similar situation with his brother, who stole her pension to drink. "What I normally charge? $450. For you, $350, and I'll put a reinforced lock on your bedroom door at no extra charge." The kindness of that stranger moved me. It wasn't pity I saw in his eyes, but understanding, solidarity from someone who knew that specific pain. "The important thing now is your safety. These new keys, only you will have copies, no one else." When he finished the job 3 hours later, my apartment had 5 new locks, including one on the bathroom. Mr. Anthony handed me the keys and a card. "If he comes with any nonsense, call me. I have 2 friends who work as security guards. They can show up real quick if needed." I looked at those new keys in my hand. They weighed more than metal. It was the weight of my decision, my reclaimed freedom. Mr. Anthony had barely left when the doorbell rang again. It was Barbara Cardoso from 501, a 68-year-old widow who always greeted me in the elevator. I had asked for her help the day before, confessing that I didn't understand digital banking at all. I brought my tablet, Mary. Let's solve this bank problem. Barbara was my opposite with technology. Fluent, quick, modern. Her fingers glided across screens with a confidence I envied. We sat at the kitchen table and she explained everything slowly. First, let's open your account at Capital One. It's an online bank without physical branches, but very secure. I'll help you transfer your money there. Edward won't be able to access it. In 2 hours, I had a virtual card, an app on my phone that Barbara configured to be senior-proof, as she joked, and the promise of a blue physical card that would arrive in a few days. Use a password no one would guess, Mary. No birth date, nothing obvious. I thought for a moment and typed 41 Hospital C for the 41 years scrubbing hospital floors. A password that carried my history, my sacrifice, something Edward would never value enough to guess. Perfect, said Barbara. Now only you will have access to your money. When she left, I felt strangely renewed, as if each small action was giving me back a piece of myself. But I knew the hardest part was yet to come. On Wednesday, I took 2 buses downtown to meet with Mr. Richard Myers. His office was in an old building on Washington Avenue on the 8th floor, with a view of the river. The receptionist, a young woman named Vanessa, offered me coffee while I waited. Mr. Richard was 52, with graying hair at the temples and a folder of documents already prepared when I entered his office. Detective Fernanda from the police station had called him in advance. Mrs. Johnson, let's get straight to the point. You own the property, correct? Your son doesn't contribute financially and is actually causing you economic harm. I nodded while he took notes. In this case, we have grounds for an eviction for just cause. Your son will have 30 days to leave the property after notification. If he refuses, we can request a possession reintegration with police assistance. The word police made my stomach sink. I remembered Edward as a child, running through the apartment with a toy fire truck. How did we come to this point? Are you sure you want to proceed with this, Mrs. Johnson? Asked Mr. Richard, noticing my hesitation. Mr. Myers, I spent my life cleaning what others dirtied in the hospital, in the hallways, in the emergency rooms. Now I want to clean my own life. Yes, I'm sure. He smiled and handed me a pen. I signed 6 different documents. When I finished, I felt as if I had signed not just papers, but a new contract with myself. The notification will be delivered to your son tomorrow by a court officer. Would you prefer not to be home at that time? I prefer to be there, sir. I want to see his face. I want him to see mine. I returned home feeling strangely calm. A storm was approaching, I knew, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one adrift. The court officer, Mr. Paul Newman, arrived punctually at 10 o'clock the next morning, a discreet man in a gray suit with a folder in hand. Edward was still sleeping. His schedules had become increasingly strange since he lost access to my cards. When the doorbell rang, I was the one who answered with my new keys. The officer explained the procedure and I asked him to wait while I called Edward. I knocked on his bedroom door, no response. I knocked harder. Edward, someone wants to speak with you. It's important. He appeared in the living room 10 minutes later, puffy eyes, disheveled hair, wearing the same T-shirt as the day before. Mr. Edward Johnson? Asked the officer. Yes, that's me. I'm serving you with a judicial eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate the property voluntarily. I saw the confusion in his eyes, followed by understanding and then anger. He took the papers with trembling hands, looking from me to the officer. Is this some kind of joke? Mom, what have you done? The officer, accustomed to these situations, remained calm. Sir, please sign here. Confirming receipt. Edward signed, practically tearing the paper with the pen. As soon as the officer left, the storm began. Have you lost your mind? You want to put me on the street? I'm your son. I remained firm despite the tremor in my legs. Yes, you are my son, and that's why it hurts so much what you did. I showed my phone with the video. He watched for 2 seconds before trying to snatch the device from my hand. You spied on me, hid a camera. That's illegal. Stealing from your own mother is also illegal, Edward. It was the first time I used that word, stealing. Until then, I had avoided it, as if not naming it made it less real. He immediately changed strategy. His eyes welled up, his voice broke. Mom, I have problems. I'm sick. It's an addiction. I need help, not punishment. The manipulation was so obvious I almost laughed. How many times had those same eyes convinced me to give just one more chance? I agree you need help, and you'll seek that help far from here, far from my money. The argument lasted almost 2 hours. He shouted, begged, threatened, cried, used every emotional weapon he knew. He reminded me of when he was small, and I would stay beside his bed when he had a fever, of when his father died, and we were just the two of us, of how he would take care of me when I got older. I am already old, Edward, and you don't even take care of yourself, let alone me. He left slamming the door and didn't return that night or the next. I started to worry, despite everything. Damn mother's heart that never switches off. On the 3rd day, he returned, calmer, apparently remorseful. He brought flowers, daisies from the garden of the neighboring building that he probably picked secretly. Mom, I'm sorry. Let's talk. We can work this out. I accepted the flowers but maintained my position. Yes, we can resolve it. You have 27 days to find somewhere to live. We established an uncomfortable truce. He stopped yelling but started something worse. A silent guilt campaign. He left nursing home brochures around the house, commented on mothers who die alone and no one discovers for days. He sighed deeply when he saw me taking blood pressure medication. Each small gesture was calculated to make me feel that I was committing a crime by demanding my space. What kind of mother evicts her own son? That's what his silent looks asked. The answer came from an unexpected place. In Sunday Mass, Father Joseph spoke about boundaries and true love. Loving is not allowing abuses. Loving is wanting the best for the other, even when the best is a firm boundary. I returned home thinking about those words. In the elevator, I met Mrs. Louise from the 8th floor, an 81-year-old lady who had lived alone since her husband passed away. Mary, is everything okay? You seem worried. I don't know why, but I told her everything right there in the elevator, which was slowly rising from the ground floor to the 8th floor. When I finished, we had already been stopped at my floor for a few minutes. Come have tea with me, she invited. I have something to show you. In Mrs. Louise's impeccable apartment, between porcelain teacups and buttery cookies, she showed me a folder with photos of her son, Marcus. He was addicted to drugs. For 10 years, I allowed him to destroy my life along with his. He stole my jewelry, sold the furniture when I traveled, made me cry every night. The photos showed a handsome young man who deteriorated over the years. The last photo showed a skeletal, unrecognizable man. The day I put him out, I thought I would die from pain. But you know what happened? 6 months later, he came back, clean, sober. He said he only managed to seek help when he found himself without a safety net. She took my wrinkled hand between hers, even more marked by time. Marcus has been clean for 12 years. He's a manager at a store in the mall. He has 2 beautiful children, and he thanks me to this day for that no that saved his life. I returned to my apartment with a clarity I hadn't felt in decades. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was possibly offering Edward his only chance to change. The following days were of meticulous preparation. I transferred more money to my new account, organized documents, threw away broken things I kept out of sentimentality. Each act was a silent declaration. I am rebuilding myself. Edward noticed the change. He changed tactics again. He started being helpful, offering tea, asking if I needed anything from the pharmacy. In other times, I would have seen this as genuine remorse. Now, I recognized the manipulation for what it was. 25 days after the notification, he finally understood I wouldn't back down. I found him in the living room with his laptop open. "I'm looking for an apartment to rent," he said without looking at me. "But it's difficult without a steady job." I felt a pang of doubt. What if he really had nowhere to go? What if he ended up on the street? That night, I called social worker Helen Torres, whom Detective Fernanda had recommended. I explained the situation, my concerns. "Mary, your son is a 45-year-old adult. There are shelters, support programs. He has options that don't involve continuing to abuse you." She referred me to a support group for families of people with chemical and gambling dependencies, which met on Tuesdays at the community center in the neighborhood. It was there that I met 5 other mothers in the same situation, women who carried the same weight of guilt, the same conflict between love and self-protection. "My son said if I truly loved him, I would pay his debts one more time," shared Marlene, a 70-year-old lady. It took me time to understand that true love was precisely saying no. I left that meeting with something precious, the certainty that I wasn't alone. I wasn't the first mother to face this dilemma, nor would I be the last. There was an entire silent army of elderly women saying enough to abuses disguised as family need. On the last day of the deadline, Edward played his final card. He appeared with a young woman and a child of approximately 3 years. "Mom, this is Jessica and Matthew, my son. I didn't tell you before, but we're a family." I looked at the uncomfortable young woman and at the child who clearly had no familiarity with Edward. The cruelty of that manipulation, using an innocent child, probably the daughter of some acquaintance, hit me like a punch. "Edward, enough. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., I want you and your things out of here." He still tried to argue, but there was a new firmness in my voice that silenced him. The young woman, visibly embarrassed, took the child in her arms and left quickly, muttering apologies. That night, I locked myself in my room and cried like I hadn't since my husband died. Not for the decision I knew was correct, but for the son I had lost long ago without realizing, for the sweet smiling boy who had transformed into this manipulative man, for the relationship that would never be the same. When the tears dried, I felt a strange peace. The grief wasn't for what I was losing now, but for what I had already lost years ago. And perhaps for the first time, there was hope of building something new for myself, and maybe even for Edward. The next day, at 2 p.m. sharp, with the silent support of some neighbors who were discreetly observing, I faced the most difficult moment of my life as a mother. Standing at the building door, watching the luggage of my only son being loaded into a taxi, Edward approached one last time. "You'll regret this, Mom. When you need someone to take care of you, remember, you chose to be alone." I breathed deeply, feeling the weight of those words trying to crush me, but they no longer had the same power over me. "I prefer honest solitude to company that robs me, Edward. If you ever truly want to return to my life, come as a son, not as a thief." He entered the taxi without looking back. When the vehicle disappeared around the corner, I realized I was holding my breath. I exhaled slowly, and with it, decades of unnecessary guilt. If you know someone who might be going through a similar situation, share this video. Silence is the biggest ally of elder abuse. Help break this cycle by hitting the bell to be notified whenever I share stories like this. I never imagined that at 73, I would need to relearn how to live. September 10th, 2024 dawned with a blue sky that seemed to mock the storm inside my chest. Sitting in the living room armchair, I watched the clock mark 1:30 p.m. In 30 minutes, I would face the moment I had so feared. My friend Irene Miller arrived punctually at 1:45 p.m. At 75, Irene has a posture that admits no argument. She came with her gray hair impeccably pulled into a bun and a determined look that gave me strength. "Mary, are you ready?" she asked, holding my trembling hands. "I'm afraid, Irene. He's my son. And you're a woman who deserves respect. You're not alone today." The doorman, Joseph Pereira, who always greeted me with a gentle smile every morning, was already notified. A discreet 58-year-old man, Joseph had a son Edward's age and was visibly disturbed when he learned of the situation. He offered to be present, just to ensure everything goes smoothly, Mrs. Johnson. At 2 p.m. sharp, I heard the key in the old lock that Edward didn't yet know no longer worked. Then came the insistent knocking. When I opened the door, his face registered confusion at seeing Irene and Joseph by my side. "What's going on here, Mom?" I pointed to the 2 large suitcases in the hallway. For weeks, while he was out, I had separated his things, folding each piece with the care of someone who is packing not just clothes, but 4 decades of maternal memories. "Your things are ready, Edward. You no longer live here." His face transformed into a mask of disbelief that quickly gave way to anger. "Have you lost your mind? This apartment is as much mine as yours. I'm your son." That's when I handed him the envelope containing the official eviction order. As he read, his face paled. "How can you do this to me after everything I've done for you?" The irony of that phrase hit me like a slap. Everything he had done for me. Daily thefts, violation of my privacy, silent humiliation. "What you did for me, Edward, was teach me that love doesn't mean being used. Now please take your suitcases." "You're abandoning your own son on the street? What kind of mother does that?" The tears came inevitably. I felt Irene squeeze my shoulder in solidarity. Joseph stepped forward. "Mr. Edward, better respect your mother's decision without making a scene. The neighbors are already watching." It was true. Mrs. Claudia from 202 was peeping discreetly through the crack in her door. The couple from 204 had coincidentally gone out to walk their Yorkshire Terrier. At that exact moment, Edward tried one last card. "Mom, I promised to change. It was just a difficult phase. You know how the job market is." "No, Edward, $42,000 is not a difficult phase. It's a crime." I saw something crumble in his eyes. Perhaps the perception that I knew everything, or perhaps the understanding that this time there would be no automatic forgiveness. "You'll regret this, old woman. Very much." The words came out like venom. Joseph took another step forward, firmer. "I think the conversation is over." With a final look of contempt, Edward took the suitcases and left. The silence that remained was deafening. I closed the door and collapsed on the sofa, sobbing. Irene sat beside me without saying anything, just holding my hand. I cried for an entire hour, not for the man who had just left, but for the boy I had once cradled in my arms. In the days that followed, I lived between waves of guilt and relief. In the first week, Edward called 37 times. I blocked his number. He appeared at the building door twice, but Joseph, firm in his solidarity, did not allow his entry. It was Barbara Cardoso, my neighbor from 501, who brought me back to life. A 68-year-old widow with enviable energy. Barbara knocked on my door on a Saturday morning with an orange cake and a proposal. "Mary Johnson, you need to get out of this den. I have a support group at the community center that I think will do you good." Reluctantly, I let myself be taken. The New Beginnings group met every Tuesday afternoon under the coordination of social worker Helen Torres, a 47-year-old woman with an extraordinary capacity to make us talk without even realizing we were opening up. It was there I met Doris Almeida, 78, who had her savings diverted by the nephew who lived with her, Teresa Souza, 71, whose son sold her car without permission, and John Paul Ferreira, 82, who had to expel his daughter-in-law who verbally abused him daily. "The worst isn't the money," confessed Doris in one of the sessions. "It's the broken trust. How to trust someone again after that." Helen taught us that financial violence against the elderly is a form of abuse rarely reported. You are not to blame for having been victims, she insisted, and putting a stop to it is an act of self-love, not an act of family disaffection. Gradually, I relearned to occupy my own space. The first truly peaceful shower I took, without constantly looking at the door, was an almost religious experience. I let the water run over my aging body, over my hands deformed by bursitis, and felt gratitude for every part of me that survived. I discovered small pleasures I had never allowed myself. With Barbara's help, I learned to better use my cell phone and discovered online bingo. Every Thursday night, Irene, Doris, and I gather in my apartment to play together, laughing like teenagers when one of us wins. The money I started saving, those $3,000 monthly that were no longer being diverted, allowed small luxuries. I bought an orthopedic mattress that relieves my back pain. I hired a cleaning lady fortnightly, sparing my inflamed joints. I did a dental treatment I had postponed for years. In November, 3 months after Edward's departure, I received a letter from him. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. I left it on the kitchen table for 2 days, looking at the envelope like someone observing a bomb that could explode at any moment. When I finally mustered the courage to open it, I found a calculated apology and at the end a request for money borrowed for a new business he was starting. I did not respond. Some cycles need to be definitively closed. At Christmas, I thought I would feel alone, but Irene invited me to dinner at her house. Barbara appeared with a homemade fruitcake the next morning. Helen, our social worker, organized a moving celebration with the entire New Beginnings group. It was at the New Year's turn that I realized how different I was. I spent New Year's Eve at the city waterfront park with my new friends. At midnight, when fireworks exploded in the sky, I looked at my reflection in the waters of the river and saw a different woman from the one who, for years, accepted being invisible in her own home. In February 2025, I began giving talks at the Senior Center about financial elder abuse. My first presentation was to a group of just 8 people, but seeing the recognition in the eyes of those women when I told my story gave me a purpose I never imagined having at 73. "How did you find the courage?" asked a sad-eyed lady after one of the talks. "It wasn't courage," I honestly replied. "It was survival." The bank reimbursed part of the lost money thanks to the police record and the efficiency of Detective Fernanda. I didn't recover everything, but enough to fulfill an old dream, visiting the Grand Canyon. In May, I spent 2 weeks traveling with Irene through Arizona and Utah. I have a photo at the Grand Canyon that I keep as the wallpaper on my cell phone. Me with open arms, smiling unreservedly at the camera. Today, sitting in my bathroom. Yes, my bathroom. I look at the white tile where I once installed a camera and realize it's no longer there. I no longer need evidence or extraordinary protections. My home has returned to being a safe place. It's strange to say this, but that degrading video ended up being my liberation. Without it, how many more years would I have spent in that invisible prison? How many more thousands of dollars would have disappeared? How much of my dignity would have been eroded day by day? My bursitis still hurts on rainy days, reminding me of the 41 years scrubbing hospital floors. My hands still tremble when I see bank notifications on my cell phone. I still occasionally look at the door during a shower. Some scars take longer to heal. But now, when I see my bank statement without alarms, when I lock the bathroom door and know no one will invade it, when I sleep without the noise of someone rummaging through my belongings in the early hours, I feel a serene gratitude for having had the chance to rediscover myself after so many decades. Sometimes I wonder where Edward is now. I heard from acquaintances that he moved to Minneapolis to live with a cousin. I don't know if he's changed, if he works, if he gambles. Part of me will always worry. It's the curse and blessing of being a mother. But I've learned that loving doesn't mean being used or disrespected. At the last New Beginnings meeting, Helen asked us to complete the sentence. "Today, I know I deserve." I thought hard before answering. "I deserve peace. I deserve respect, I deserve comfort. All seemed incomplete answers. Finally, I said, "Today I know I deserve to be the protagonist of my own life." That's what I want to tell you who are watching me now. No matter your age, I'm 73 and only now understood this. It's never too late to take back the reins of your story, to lock the door when you need privacy, to say no when someone wants to abuse your kindness. My story may have come to an end, but perhaps it's just the beginning for someone who's watching me. If this account touched your heart, leave your like and tell me in the comments the moment you decided to say enough to someone who was hurting you. Your story deserves to be heard too. From my now quiet and safe bathroom in my apartment on Maple Street, I, Mary Johnson, say goodbye with a certainty. The best part of my life began at 73, when I finally understood that I deserve to respect myself as much as I've always respected others.